Welcome to Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. We fucked up the first part because we were just kind of going off of memory on the extended scenes for Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. But now we
52 episodes in, we're learning.
Yes. So if you've been following, we started to cover the extended editions of the Lord of the Rings, trying to figure out if they're worth it or not for the extended run that the extended editions cover. It covers more material, but is it worth watching the extra hour of footage? We're here to talk about that and figure out if you should waste your time on it or not. But
whoa. Spend your time.
But what we did with with Fellowship of the Ring, we talked about parts 1 and 2, but we were going off of memory, which was really dumb. So what we've done for this, part 1 of The Two Towers, is we have found on the Tolkien Gateway, which is a little wiki page, they come out and actually list all of the new scenes and all of the extended scenes. So that's what we're going to use to go off of, and it should be a much more succinct conversation, a much more targeted conversation, and hopefully that's what we get out of this episode today. We should do our little banter, though. How are you, Sam?
I'm doing well. We are continuing our experiment, our introduction of solid foods with our daughter who just turned 7 months old. So every night is an adventure in a potential allergen or something sticky. We're using a method called solid starts, where you give them whole pieces of food, big chunks of food to kind of gnaw on, in addition to mashes. And so my normal post-dinner routine of cleaning up the kitchen, loading the dishwasher now includes washing various smocks and bibs and a high chair, the floor. So we are all enjoying it, especially our dog, who gets to clean up everything that falls on the ground. How are you?
You're not going to be the asshole who's like, oh, our daughter is 20 months old, right? You're just going to be like, she's a year.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, until when she hits a year, I'll say that she's a year.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not gonna ride you now because
she's 13 months.
She hasn't hit a year, but that is one of my biggest pet peeves. When someone's talking about their kid and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is my 14-month-old." I'm like, "Okay, she's a year. We get it." Like, I'm not a
the older
31-year-old and 3 months.
There was a point where she was 1 day old, right? And so once you start aging, the older you get, the bigger the increments you can use when you're counting it up. Right now,
I don't know. To me, once you hit 1, I feel like you have to stop using months.
Yeah, but there's a difference between I shouldn't say this. I don't know for sure, but my impression is there's a difference between a 1-year-old and a 1.5-year-old.
Sure, but I don't give a fuck.
Well, you don't give a fuck now, but maybe one day you will.
Once you hit 1, start using whole numbers. That's just my personal.
Just round up or down, absolute value.
Yeah, I'm cool with it. I'm still 31 until December. Then I'll be 32.
You might as well be 40.
No, round down. I'd be 30.
So all right,
you're 40.
I'm 40. All right.
Two Towers, part 1.
Well, hold on. That's how I am. How are you? You had a big win in fantasy football this weekend.
I did. The leader of our league bleeds, and I just proved it to everybody. So hopefully he starts to amass some more losses. Now, the good thing is I'm only 3-3, but my half of the league is not doing well.
Yeah, you're in the weak league. We have.
Yeah, I'm in the weak conference.
The conference, yeah. Are you at the top of that conference?
No, I'm second place.
Oh, to your cousin, right?
To Zach, yeah.
Yeah. So he just beat me, which is, I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about it because I was really relying on my running back who's injured.
Mhm.
but it's so frustrating to.
But that's the thing about our fantasy though, is you just have to make the playoffs, which is the hard part. As long as you're in the top two of your conference, you get to move on. And it's looking pretty good for me to at least make the playoffs. Now,
Yeah.
the first year we did our league and I won it all. I barely made the playoffs and I went on to win the championship. So I think that's the lesson I took from that is as long as you make the playoffs,
Well,
you've got a chance to win.
my side of the league, my conference is going to be a bloodbath to make the playoffs because I think we have 4 people with
Winning
either
records.
a winning or a 50-50 record.
Yeah.
And we'll see. But it was an interesting week there. And then our mutual fandom of the Red Wings. So far, the Red Wings are they 2-0?
No, they lost the first game.
The opener they lost, but they
they're
won
2-1.
2, including a road shutout against Columbus and a home win against the Lightning, who have kind of been a bugbear.
They've been our Duran's Bane.
Yeah.
Now, the good thing, speaking of Red Wings, they are going on their West Coast trip in February. I'm getting tickets to go see them in Vancouver. And then I have tickets 4 days later to see them in Seattle. So I'll be able to see them back to back pretty much.
That'll be nice.
Over, what's the holiday in February? MLK Day? Yeah.
That'll be good.
Over MLK Day. Yeah.
We had season tickets or like a quarter season package. And we did that 2 years in a row and it was a lot of fun. Just fun to go and coordinate with the people who are also going and meet up before or after the game. But now with the baby, we gave up on that. And I'll be surprised if we can go to more than 1 or 2 games this year. Just, it's kind of a schlep with the kid.
Having to get a sitter and all that. Yeah.
Or bringing her because she's so small that she can go on your lap, but then you got to worry about got to give her the headphones and get her having a beer spilled on her, although it does increase the chances that you'll get on the fan cams, which
baby's first game.
Baby's first game. That's how you get a local TV spot. All right. Shall we jump into the Two Towers?
Yeah, we're just going to go sequentially down. And I think we just go back and forth because you have the same website open, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to just start with the new scenes that were added. And I think we just go every other. And we talk about, was it necessary? What did it add? And we'll go from there. So the first new scene in the first part of the Two Towers was the Elven rope scene. So this is when Frodo and Sam are going through, oh my God, why can't I think of the name of the place?
The Emyn Muil.
The Emyn Muil. They make their way down. Sam loses his salt. Frodo grabs it. And then Sam exclaims that he's sad that they have to leave behind this rope because they tied it at the top of the cliff. They pull on it and it unties itself magically and comes down to them. Sam, was this worthy of being cut? Did it add anything? Are you appreciative of it?
I like the scene. It's slightly comedic, which is, I do think that might detract a little bit from their circumstance. You want to get a sense of how desperate things are, and the comedy undercuts that a little bit. I will say it is nice to have kind of give Sam a chance to. He's got such a wonderful. Sam is such a wonderful character. You have that little moment where he says, "Oh, it's one of my nuts, Mr. Frodo. There's no help," and then it kind of comes undone. And it's not to like he's not being made fun of or being made to look stupid. It's just kind of him again, kind of coming into contact with the magical nature of the elves, right? And so it's a fun Sam scene, but yeah, it kind of detracts from the tone that you want to get, which is desperation and fear and paranoia.
But one thing it does start to build upon is that whole concept of Sam anticipating a return journey. And because I mean, that's the whole point of the salt is he needs it so he can season the food so they can travel back. And this is the first, like, they don't come out and say he's anticipating return journey, but it begins to drop that seed of Sam is thinking of this as a there and back again. And I think the salt is like the first taste of that.
Yeah. Yeah. In that case too, it helps. It demonstrates his naivety, which that actually kind of conflicts, I would say, a little bit with the Sam that we get later on in the movie, as he's the one who's skeptical of Gollum the entire time. And I guess that kind of feeds into maybe his duality of, on the one hand, you can be naive and like not understand the desperate nature of your circumstance, but on the other hand, when you see something that's bad and you're like 100% opposed to it, you might be right. In that case, Gollum is going to try to do something. Just a matter of time.
Next scene.
So this is the massacre at the Fords of Isen. This is when Eomer and a handful of his riders come across the aftermath of a battle. And I can't remember if this is in the books, the first or the second battle at the Fords of Isen. But the big takeaway here is that they find on the battlefield, the mortally wounded son of Theoden, King of Rohan. They find Theodred, and they retrieve his body and bring it back to Edoras, where he later dies. And I think this scene is, we don't actually see this in the books, I don't believe. We just kind of hear about it. So this is wholly invented. But what did you think of it?
Unnecessary to me. It was worth being cut. I mean, just like the books, I think it's totally okay to say this happened. And we'll get to it later, but we do have the funeral of Theodred is another extended scene, which I like having in. But I mean, I just don't think the massacre at the Fords of Isen needs to be there, because you can still have that scene later on where you have the interaction between Wormtongue and Eowyn and Theodred barely being alive at that point. Like, that all can stay in and you can see the effects of the massacre, but the looking through the bodies, I think it just wasted time.
Yep. We don't need it to establish the character of Eomer, because his character scenes happen later on. We don't need that to know that he's loyal to Rohan and a friend of Theodred, obviously family to Theodred. And we get that with his scenes with Grima and with the king. And we never get a single word from Theodred. If you had an extended scene when you had Theodred talking to somebody about the threat of Saruman, and then he kind of tragically is wounded and you think he's dead, that would be something else. But we don't get that either. I'm not saying you should have that, but I think this was cut from the theatrical run wisely.
And again, like, we can be critical of what should or shouldn't have been cut from the theatrical edition. But for me, I mean, the extended edition, I love that it's in there.
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
love being able to see it. Yeah.
I mean, I love Eomer. I think Carl Urban, his performance is fantastic. I love the Rohan costumes, the armor and the helmets and everything. So it's just fun to see that, to see more of that, especially I guess training.
We'll get that. Yeah, we'll get to that, because I have some thoughts on Rohan and the culture of Rohan when we get to the funeral of Theodred.
That's actually more in line with what I was thinking as well. All right, so then the next scene, let's go to that.
Next one is the Song of the Entwives. Now, this is one thing we talked about in the Fellowship extended scenes, that I like that the extended editions give you more of the musical aspects of Tolkien's work. We get the song of the Lay of Beren and Luthien. And in this one, we get more of that interaction between Treebeard and Merry and Pippin. And he actually sings the Song of the Entwives, where he's in a very raspy, windy tone, singing the "Come Back to Me" and "Say My Land is Best." And if you've read the books, you probably loved this scene. If you didn't read the books and you were just a Lord of the Rings layperson watching the movies, you probably would appreciate it not being in the theatrical cut. What do you think?
I agree with your kind of summation there, that it's for book readers. It's not for the theater going audience. One thing that occurred to me watching this scene was how the Two Towers, this and other scenes, and I think some of the other extended scenes, to me add to the feeling that the Two Towers is maybe the low point of the trilogy in a lot of ways, from an emotional standpoint. You have kind of the beginning of the desperation of Sam and Frodo. You have the state of Rohan at the beginning, especially of the movie, and then you have the Ents, which is kind of a tragic. The whole story of the Ents and the Ent wives is very tragic, and the song really underlines that. And then it actually kind of fits with some of the other kind of fatalism that you get from Treebeard, talking about the last march of the Ents, and talking about kind of things happening for the last time. And so it adds to that mood in the movie, which I thought that was effective, and I appreciated that.
What about the Ent draft scene that is next?
Can you outline that one?
That's where Merry and Pippin are in Treebeard's home, and they are drinking the waters of Fangorn, and they begin to grow.
Is that just kind of page to screen, just a straight up adaptation, or does it seem like does it act faster in the movie?
It does. They get rid of that whole, gosh, what's the tree's name? Quickbeam, I think is its name.
Yeah.
They get rid of all of that, where during the Entmoot, Treebeard sends them off with the hastiest of Ents because he's already made up his mind to go to war. So it's kind of that scene where Treebeard is like, don't drink the water. And then they do anyway. And then it makes them grow. So that's kind of this scene.
Okay. But in the book, he doesn't say don't drink the water. He pours it for them, I think. Like they get multiple servings of the Ent draft, I think, in the book.
Yeah, I'm just shooting the shit.
Oh, he doesn't say don't drink the water, because that would be like kind of fun.
Don't drink the water.
Yeah, I don't recall this scene from my watch, but I think Haley might have been talking to me about something.
They kind of go back and forth where, I mean, they've talked in the past where I think in the books, they say one of them is taller and one of them is shorter. I can't remember which is which, but after a couple sips, it's Pippin who is shorter, because Pippin takes some sips of and water, ends up being a little bit taller, and then the other one goes, oh wait, I'm 3'3", 3'4", and then he grows an inch. And then Merry, they fight back and forth, and then they get swallowed by one of the trees. And I think that's a callback to Old Man Willow.
Oh yeah,
because Treebeard comes up and is like, eat dirt, drink water, or whatever he says. Don't eat hobbits, and then he pulls the hobbits out. But
so I'm okay with this scene being cut. Like I said, I don't recall this from my most recent rewatch. I must have been distracted by something going on in the house, but you don't need it. I think, unfortunately, the movie had to invent things for Merry and Pippin to do after they were rescued, and you get that with them being at the Entmoot and kind of seeing how that goes compared to how it goes in the books. And really, they don't do a whole lot until the end of the book, and actually the beginning of the Return of the King. So I could see how they were like, okay, we got to do something with Merry and Pippin while we're here. But then I don't know, it doesn't really add to the drama of the movie. And to be quite frank, you kind of just want to sim ahead to where the Ents are attacking Isengard. But that might be me being overly harsh.
Next up is the one I really wanted to talk about.
Well,
the funeral of Theodred. Now, why did you want to talk about this in particular? And then I will say my reasoning.
It was a really great display of the material culture of Rohan. So the armor and the dress. Then you have the song, which is sung by Eowyn. And then just the whole kind of contemplation of the spirit of Theodred and the contemplation of
halls of his fathers.
The halls of, that's that scene between Theoden and Gandalf. But all that's great.
Yeah. And just, I mean, I agree with all of that, but just to add another layer on top of it, Rohan is a completely different culture from Gondor.
Yeah.
They are not Westerness, men of the West. They were a group of people that decided to help the Gondorians, and they were granted the land that they currently live on and developed their own country of Rohan. They also speak a different language. They don't speak, what do they call it? Common? Or
Westron.
Star Wars, Western. And Star Wars, it would be basic. They speak basic. But I would like more of those examples of Rohan being different than Gondor. They basically give you it's Gondor, but with cavalry. It's like, or it's Gondor's cavalry. And I wanted a little bit more, and this gave me a little bit more. I still would like more than what the extended edition gave me, because the only example of their language is Eowyn's song. But yeah, I don't know. That's my nitpick. And I feel like they could have done the cultural differences between Gondor and Rohan a little bit better and explained it a little bit better.
Yeah, but you also like they didn't want to do too much world building when ultimately it wasn't going to be critical. Like the cultural differences aren't significant in whether Rohan will come to Gondor's aid or not. So I could see how they didn't want to do that. But to me, the thing that jumped out that I haven't noticed before was when they were burying Theodred. I think it was maybe his helmet was on his. It's not a stretcher. I think it's called like a bear, whatever the platform that his body was resting on, and it looked so much like the famous helmet from the Sutton Hoo treasure. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
Which actually, side note, there's an interesting movie about that excavation, like happening right before the World War II, and the actor who plays Balin, I believe, in the Hobbit trilogy, portrays one of the excavators, like an archaeologist who comes and tries to take over from the local digger. Anyway, Sutton Hoo treasure was this incredible example of Anglo-Saxon material culture, coins, and it demonstrated the trade links they had with the rest of the world. I think they found gold and precious stones from India in this treasure buried in England, and they had this famous gold helmet that was covered in filigree and had been etched with even like a mustache on the cover, and they think it was purely ceremonial. And the helmet that Theodred is being buried with looks a lot like it. It's not perfect, but it looks a lot like it, and that really fits in with Tolkien's approach to Rohan, which was these are kind of the Anglo-Saxon stand-ins, and their language, Rohirric, is I think the closest to Anglo-Saxon in Tolkien's Legendarium, and you could kind of hear that in the song that Eowyn sings, which again is not in the theatrical release. I was like, oh, that sounds a lot like the Old English that I've heard, listening to Beowulf or even reading Canterbury Tales.
Our next scene is Brago.
This is him calming Brago in the stable, which that kind of confused me, because I think the Brago finding Aragorn, which happens later, that was in the theatrical release. And I always thought that was the same horse that he was riding during the battle that came and found him. I never realized it was a different horse entirely, because he calms this horse down. It was Theodred's horse that they established in the movie. I can't remember if that is accurate to the book or not. Do you?
Yes, I believe so. Or it was one of the people who died at the Battle of the Fords of Isen, because they basically say its owner passed away and now it's uncontrollable.
So,
and that's when Aragorn walks up, you're right, and then kind of pets it on the nose, calms it, and then says,
he speaks Elvish to it, right?
Yeah, and then he says, this horse has seen it's enough battle, and then tells them to let it go.
Yeah. Which
is fortuitous, because then it kind of wakes him up after he falls off the cliff and almost drowns.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of things I liked about the scene. One, again, it's another Aragorn scene where you kind of see his gentle side, right? He's a healer. He speaks Elvish. He has this power to him in many ways where he can calm this anxious, scared, disturbed animal. And also it kind of hints at the fact that horses speak Elvish or understand Elvish in a different way, which I think in Tolkien, like the elves were the first to kind of tame horses and taught them speech, similar to how they woke up trees. They don't get that explicit in the movie, but I kind of like it. It's kind of like a deep lore cut.
I don't know if I got that in depth with Aragorn talking to it in Elvish. To me, it was more just, it was like a magical effect that the Elvish words were having on like he was kind of casting a spell, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think it was intended to be like, hey, everybody, remember how the elves taught horses how to speak Elvish or something along those lines. That scene recalled in my mind something that I read at some point, either in the Silmarillion or somewhere else.
Last extended scene. Oh no, there's 2 left. No, 1. There's 1.
Last one, yeah.
The Ring of Barahir.
So
I believe this the conversation between Saruman and Wormtongue.
It is, yes. And there's even another scene during the kind of expulsion of Grima from Edoras, where you see Grima look at Aragorn's ring, and when Aragorn's kind of offering him his hand to help him off the ground after he intervenes and Theoden seemingly gonna kill Grima. And then Grima describes the ring to Saruman, and Saruman references a tome and says it's the Ring of Barahir, and kind of talking about Gandalf, like, have you discovered the heir of Numenor or something along those lines. What did you think?
Great lore pull with the description of the ring by Wormtongue, with 2 serpents, one devouring, one being devoured, however he phrases it, with emerald eyes, like an emerald gemstone in the middle. And when you've read the Silmarillion, like, that ring has so much history and lore behind it.
That's
and
like
the fact
that is probably one of the oldest objects that we see. It's older than any of the Rings of Power. It's older than, I'm assuming, the Shards of Narsil. I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's.
I don't know. Was that Narsil was made for Elendil, or he had it? So that's at least, yeah. It could be Elvish made for him because he's an elf friend. Like, who knows? But Ring of Barahir is like second age.
No, at Ring of Barahir,
first age?
It's first age. Like it's first age pre-War of Wrath, right? It's kind of like, because the idea is that it was given to, oh gosh, it was a gift from an elf to a man as thanks for saving the elf during one of the battles, and I think it was the Battle of Sudden Flame or something like that. I don't remember all. But it's like, it was crafted. It was given from an elf to a man when Morgoth was still in the world. And that means it was
given to like Turin's dad or something.
I think so. Yeah, and I can't remember.
Then it passes to Turin, and then it over time eventually gets to like Elendil, or not Elendil, Eärendil. Yeah.
Well, okay, so the Ring of Barahir was an ornate silver ring given to Barahir by the Elven king Finrod Felagund. So Finrod, brother of Galadriel, in reward for saving his life in the Dagger of Rakholak, which is the Battle of Sudden Flame. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that bitch is first age, man.
It's first age, at least. I mean, it might have even been forged in Valinor or created in Valinor. Yeah, it was cool stuff. So that's it for the new scenes. Were there any?
Yeah, I think when we look at the list of all the scenes that are just scenes from the theatrical but extended, that'd be so difficult for us to figure out what's slightly changed or what's slightly added.
Yeah.
So I think we just bypass those. But
I agree. The one thing I would add is some of the scenes with Éowyn, especially the scenes with Éowyn and Aragorn and Theoden talking to Aragorn about Éowyn. There's one particular line of dialogue of, she came to me after her father was killed by orcs, and then shortly saw her mother succumb to grief, kind of talking about how things have been very bad for Éowyn, which it was one of those conversations, one of those scenes that to me highlighted the low point that is the Two Towers. And it was just, I think it helps build Éowyn's character so that when we get to the point where she kind of joins the Riders of Rohan, it makes a little bit more sense given her kind of past history of trauma, if you want to use kind of a modern conception of it all.
She's looking at everything as being like all doom and gloom, and
yeah,
I think she sees it as, I'm going to go out fighting versus just wait here and die, because I don't think she thinks they're going to be successful.
Yeah,
I think she has a pretty negative outlook on the events. So yeah, that kind of backs that up a little bit more.
All right, one final thing, kind of in this vein of Éowyn scenes, is the it's not an extended scene, but the dialogue between Éowyn and Grima, especially Grima talking about Éowyn, of who knows what things you've told yourself. And
oh, dude, Brad is such a good actor.
Oh my god, fantastic. Like, great writing, fantastic delivery. You know the story about him, and they shaved his eyebrows.
Oh no.
Yeah, they shaved his eyebrows to make him more unsettling without being obvious, because he's already like really pale, and he's got like, pale and greasy. He's got the makeup on, so he looks sickly, but then you don't even really notice that he doesn't have eyebrows, but your brain does. And just fantastic filmmaking. There we go. That's it for the first half.
One more thing about his name's Brad Dourif, but another thing that I love him in is Deadwood. Have you ever seen that show?
No,
the
I have
old
not.
Western.
Yeah, it's one of those like
cult
gaps.
It got canceled. Yeah, it got canceled after like 2 seasons or something. But it's a very, very good show.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, worth the watch. And he's in it. He plays the doctor.
Okay,
he's great in that.
He is really good in a very early X-Files episode. I don't know if it's season 1 or season 2, and he plays a serial killer on death row who is kind of maybe serving as a medium for deceased individuals, including maybe, I think it was Scully's dad or something like that. I can't remember. Just fantastic, really intense scenes. Yeah, Brad Dourif is a fantastic actor, and him as Grima, especially in this movie, his early stuff in Rohan is fantastic. Anything else for the
That's
first
it for
half
me.
of the Two Towers?
Close us out, Sam.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us as we discuss the first half of the Two Towers extended edition. Next week, we will cover the second half of the Two Towers, talking about all the extended scenes. What do they bring? Were they good to cut from the theatrical release? Some of that additional Elves, Rings, and nerdy things, nerding out over things like the Ring of Barahir or the acting chops of Brad Dourif. So if you want that kind of content, subscribe to our podcast, like us on Facebook, come join our online community to discuss episodes or your own thoughts about Lord of the Rings, The Witcher, any other topic that we've covered on this. Tell us if you like France. Have you been to France?
We also have our polls from
yes.
episode 48, where we had our Lord of the Rings Battle Royale, trying to figure out who would win in a fight. We are currently on round 4 in our group, Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things podcast group, where you can vote on our polls. Once we finish up with round 5, we will do one final round featuring all of the winners to see who the ultimate winner would be.
All right. So if that's what you want, come join the Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things podcast community. Like I said, like us everywhere. Share us with your friends. Thank you to our loyal listeners. We will see you next week. Bye.